I'm Jim Lloyd. I'm Program Director for Junior Appalachian Musicians, and we're going to talk about the tune that we know as Soldier's Joy. Now, originally it wasn't called that, and there are numerous names for this tune. So we might as well start at the beginning. Now, the tune is of English or Scottish origins. So, and the reason I say could be either one was the fact that this song probably dates back over 600 years, which would predate the fiddle. But still, the tune has origins that far back. Now, at that time in Europe, in the spring of the year, there were traveling troops of musicians that would come to your village, and they were called dance masters. The dance master had fiddlers with him, or whatever instrument was available at the time, and they would teach the villagers the new dances that had come about being written during the winter. And they had special tunes for these dances. And the song that we know as Soldier's Joy probably is of these origins. Now, it spread quickly through England and Scotland, and there's even some versions of it from Scandinavia way back there. And you know, the Vikings were all over the place, and their descendants were all over the place. So it spread like that through the dance masters all over Europe. It was played quite a bit different than what we hear today. So I'm going to play kind of an original version of it. This fiddle that I'm playing was made between 1770 and 1790, so that's a real authentic sound. But Soldier's Joy was an old tune when this fiddle was made. So it spread out through Europe in that fashion. Now, then the settlers came over to this country. By the Revolutionary War, every fiddler in the world knew it. So any encampment of soldiers, fiddlers would play that. Any pub, inn, any kind of social gathering, certainly dances, and also hangings. Anywhere that there was a large crowd of people, the song Soldier's Joy was there. But it was probably originally called The King's Head. And among the other titles it was known of was Love Somebody, or I'm My Mother's Darling Boy, even Rock the Cradle Lucy, which became another fiddle tune it's kind of kin to Soldier's Joy, so it could have come out of it. So there was all kinds of variations and stuff. But it was played in that manner for a long, long time until the late 1700s, early 1800s, and by the early 1800s it was really changing, and I'm going to tell you why it changed. So here is the reason it changed. The banjo came over from Africa, and the syncopated rhythms of the original banjo, the banjo players heard the fiddlers, and in trying to play the song on the banjo, they put the African rhythms with it. So it became a much more danceable piece. Now this banjo is an 1840s Boucher, and this is pretty close to what it would have sounded like early on. So like I say, the fiddle rubbed off on the banjo and the banjo rubbed off on the fiddle. So this is the banjo version. So like I said, the fiddle rubbed off on the banjo and the banjo rubbed off on the fiddle. So all of a sudden you had a much more peppier tune to dance to. Now, we're heading up into the time period of the American Civil War. Fiddle and banjo were the predominant instruments. You heard them played everywhere together like that. And all the soldiers in the war, every fiddler by that time, North and South, they all knew this song. So it was really making the rounds. It started being mentioned some in journals. It started being mentioned in books that were being written. The very first transcription of Soldier's Joy, when it was written down, was in 1756, and it was counted as old then. So it was traditional piece, and it kept going, kept evolving. More and more people really, the social gatherings, people were dancing to it. They really enjoyed it. But then there was one more step in the evolution of Soldier's Joy. By the Civil War, it was known as Payday in the Army. So it was still known by different titles, but Payday in the Army became the predominant title. Now the next step is where it really changed. This was the machine responsible for the change. This is an 1850 Martin guitar made by C.F. Martin and Company up in Pennsylvania. And this, if I'm not mistaken, this is one of the very first ones they made in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. So the mountain people didn't have guitars too often. The very first ones did come with the railroads in the early 1850s, as the railroads made it up, they bought the guitar with them. So people really adapted to guitar very quickly. The mountain people really liked the guitar. It had a much more full sound. So all of a sudden you had something to hold the rhythm while the fiddle and the banjo played the lead together. And also you had something really nice to sing with. So there were more and more verses written to Soldier's Joy as time went on, from even continues to now. But originally, you know, the fiddlers playing, they would make up verses to the song. So all of a sudden you have people doing more singing with just a guitar. Now, even up in the 1950s, there was a fellow named Jimmy Driftwood from Arkansas that wrote a full set of verses for Soldier's Joy. So it goes on even today. You'll hear people at dances make up verses to it. So I'm going to do some of the older verses that I know with this 1850 guitar. So I guess we'll have to call this Payday in the Army. I'm my mother's darling boy, I'm my mother's darling boy, I'm my mother's darling boy, gonna get some soldier's joy. I'm gonna get a drink, don't you wanna go? I'm gonna get a drink, don't you wanna go? I'm gonna get a drink, don't you wanna go? All for soldier's joy. Sun goes up and the sun goes down, sun goes up and the sun goes down, sun goes up and the sun goes down, seen that gal in her white nightgown. Grasshopper sitting on the sweet potato vine, grasshopper sitting on the sweet potato vine, grasshopper sitting on the sweet potato vine, along comes a chicken and says you're mine. Little piece of cornbread laying on the shelf, little piece of cornbread laying on the shelf, little piece of cornbread laying on the shelf. If you want any more, you can sing it yourself. So it started spreading more and more, and then by the 1800s, you see it mentioned more and more in literature. And there was an English fiddler named Thomas Hardy who wrote a book called Far from the Maddening Crowd, and he was a fiddle player. So he mentioned Soldier's Joy in the novel, and he liked to play that song personally. He said it was one of his favorite pieces. So, and that was in a proper literature form. So more people got interested in Soldier's Joy. Now by the 1920s, when the recording started, the very first American recording of it was in 1924. Fiddle player named Sid Harraker from Tennessee, and he had an accompanist on the banjo, a really famous guy named Uncle Dave Macon. So that was the first American recording of the song. It continued to be recorded. Loads of bands did it. The Skillet Lickers, Gid Tanner and Skillet Lickers in Atlanta, Georgia. It was spread throughout, a very popular tune. Now the neat thing about this is all the versions were slightly different, depending on what area of the country you come from and what areas of the influence of other nationalities, other tunes even, the licks got thrown in. So it all got kind of homogenized, or not really homogenized, but Americanized. So right now, I think that you could go anywhere in the world, and if there's a fiddler, you would hear Soldier's Joy. It was after the Civil War that it became known as Soldier's Joy. There are still people that call it the other titles, and there are still people writing lyrics to it. Like I say, you could go anywhere in the world and hear Soldier's Joy. I've got a good friend that's a dancer, and he said that Soldier's Joy has wore out more shoe leather than any other song he can possibly think of. We continue now in modern times. If you will sit and listen to a lot of Western movies, you'll hear it in the background. Like the cowboy goes into a saloon, you'll hear the piano playing it. you'll hear a fiddler playing it. It's always in the background, especially a square dance scene. You see them dancing to the tune. You even, in recent years, there was a Super Bowl commercial that had a beaver fiddling Soldier Joy on it. So the sound has continued throughout the time period, wore out many a shoe leather, and I've played it at dances myself. It's still out there. If you don't know the tune, you've got ample opportunity to learn it now on any instrument you choose. It's a fun song to play, and I think that's one of the things that's kept it popular. And you know, when you hear on the radio, they'll say, this is among the top 100 hits of all time. Really not. I think Soldier Joy is in the top 10, if not number 1, because it's everywhere. And once again, it's still very popular. So if you take a notion that you want to learn more about Soldier Joy, if you go on YouTube or any search engine and type in Soldier Joy Fiddle, you're going to get thousands of responses. And there are hundreds and hundreds of different versions of the song. So you can pick your own, you can listen to the tune and change it to suit yourself. And so we're going to leave you with a little bit of Soldier Joy. I'll play it the old way one time through, and then I'll go into the Americanized version.
This project is made possible by a grant from the Blue Ridge National Heritage Area Partnership.